Hi, so here's an update on the project so far. For those of you who are not aware of it, this is many years ago I did a case called the Checkmate 1500 for the Amiga 500. I won't go into that now, this is not the time or place, but I decided to redo the whole concept 20 odd years later on, but with a bit more wider scope. So here's the progress so far. Hopefully you've seen the previous videos, so I'm not going to go over old ground. But the basic idea is to make a case with the good looks of the Amiga 3000. The option, now it's important, it's an option of a riser, so I can turn the riser and the keyboard off. Okay, so that's how it will come as standard. But if you want, you can have the optional riser, which means you can slide the keyboard underneath. Okay, I really like that. So that's from the 1000, and I think even today it's actually got some. It's got some legs on this. Yeah, it got some legs on this. And I do think it's something that could be quite a nice thing to have. I do want to cover one thing now on the colour. By default, the colour is going to be black. It seems by far the most popular. However, when we launch the Kickstarter, there will be a batch of white stroke cream. The balance of the colours is going to be interesting, getting the right colour. But there will be a batch of them, and if there's still interest, I will do another batch later on. But by default, I'm going to be manufacturing black units because I think that's where the future of this market is. But yeah, so that's the thing on the colours. So I will be doing the cream colours, do not worry about it, but it means that they may be from the initial batch. If there's more people want them after that, I'll get a reasonable size of people together first before I make them, because setting off just making 3 of them is really expensive. So yeah, that's on the colour anyway. So while it's busy saving, right, so let's go I'm going to show you the 3 of the versions and how they're set up. So we'll start off with the A1500. Now let me turn off the riser and the keyboard because you've seen that, and you can see I've got a floppy disk in the front. Now you'll notice these panels in the front. Now this is new now. So let me just turn off. This is going to be a lot of turning on and off of things. Oh, this is optional as well. It's not, it's not necessarily going to be out the box, because a lot of people don't want it, some do. That panel there though is going to be for logos, so you can screen print whatever you want on it. I haven't decided if I'll do a default screen print, but I think I'll leave it blank and people can put what they like on it, and then I'll just take badges and screen print. Anyway, back to these panels. So probably previously I was just talking about these panels being here, but I can actually turn these on and off now. So let me turn off these panels so you can see inside now. The idea is, if I turn off the lid as well, just so you get a feel for this. If I turn this round, you can see these holes in the back here, and when I turn them back on again, insert floppy, can you see this section here? Let me just center this up again. It's got these holes above and below, and it allows you to screw them into place. Okay, so that's how that works, and you can get, there's various different types I've got. So as you can see here, let me turn off the floppy disk drive. So that will take your 1200 or 600 or 500 internal floppy disk drive in this panel. It's one size fits all. So let me turn off. Okay, let's turn this off. So right, so you can see, I'll turn off those panels so we can see different fronts. Insert floppy, insert blank. Right, so for example, you may want to have a DVD, and also there's this one here, which is, this allows you to put in for example, a slot loading DVD drive, okay, if you want one. And on here you can pop in, for example, a basic floppy disk if you want to put one of the old-fashioned floppy disks, or if you want to put one of these memory card systems in there, which are like 15-20 pounds, which are really nice. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to plug them into Amiga. There may be more of a Windows, a PC thing. because remember, this case is going to be for the PC market as well, not just the Amiga market. The Amiga market's driving it to start with, but hopefully it'll do well in the virtual reality market. I'm hoping. So anyway, so you've got those two. So those come in and out, and we can swap them around. So if I turn that off and turn off the DVD slot, and then we'll go back in. So we've got these slots at the front. You'll also notice we've got the power connection on the front. We're having fun with that. Easy for obviously on the PC side, but on the Amiga side it's a little bit more tricky. But yeah, so there's but they're to match the design of the Amiga. Now, obviously, this is really designed to look like an Amiga 3000 case. It is obviously wider because it's got to do so much. I mean, you'd never get the 500 in it or the 1200 with accelerator in it. But that's so it is about an inch and a half wider. But let's now come inside and have a look. So now what we can see, I'll turn off the power. Let me turn off the power so you can see inside. So what we've got here is an Amiga 500 motherboard. Obviously you can put anything you like underneath there. There's quite a bit of room under the drive tray, as you can see. So you can put memory cards in there without any problem at all. These obviously, and it has been mentioned before, but I haven't put the standoffs in here because that's a very large job. I'll be putting the standoffs in, so for holding the different boards. But now, importantly, if you look over to the far end, and you can see here, if I turn off card small, let's turn that off for a second. In fact, actually, let me turn off the back. Have I got the right? Yes, I have got the right one on here. Sorry. Right. So you can see here's an expansion board here. Now this is being. I've actually found someone now last day or two, guy to help me. This is his name's on the site. Is Ron. Rob. Sorry. It's going to help me do these boards. He's actually done one already, and it'll plug it. The idea is. It's kind of a reproduction of what we had in the old days, in the old Checkmate 1500. So you put a board, it right angles it, but you'll notice a couple of extras. So we've got a slot here, so you can plug in an ACA 500 Plus, which I use, or any other typical board like that plugs in, that's kind of does memory, a bit of acceleration, SD cards, that kind of thing, or compact flash cards, should I say. But also on the top, you see there's a Zorro 2 slot, so you'll be able to plug into it bear with me, but there you go, a medium length Zorro 2 card, not full length. You won't get full length cards in it. I'm not making it that big. I don't see the point. So I'm leaving it, but most where they end up at the slot. Now most an awful lot of cards will go in here. So I mean, graphics cards. Can't put a Picasso 4 in it, but then again you haven't got the high-speed bus either, so it's a bit of a waste. But it will do a Zorro 2 slot, and of course then you'll be able to have access to the back of it. And so you've got your slots here. There will be a cover here that's going to go on. In fact, actually I've still got. Let me turn that off. That's better. You can see the ports on the back now. They're the Amiga 500 ports. This slot here is a generic used for lots of things kind of port, which you can 3D print plates to go across that. The fans are actually out of position here, so just kind of ignore that. But they'll be obviously. But now for the 500, there's not really a big deal. The fans, but and they're not included, so they'll be extra because they're like £5, £6, £7 each or something. And you don't really need them for the 500. Now, the other thing that's very important here is if you notice this big socket here. Now the reason for that. Now, bear in mind this is really there's an awful lot involved here. Now the power supply is not included with the case. Okay, really important. The case is the case. Okay, it's literally the base, the back, the front, the top, the drive tray. That's the case. All the rest are extras, obviously, because I'm not going to give a 500 adapter board to everybody. But if you're buying a 500, there'll be this available, so you'll be able to plug that in. But the great thing about it is this socket here, you will be able to take power from this SFX power supply, plug it into there, and it'll power the whole machine. So you don't need to worry about your 500 power supply running out of power or anything like that. So that was why I wanted to do a custom board. So that's 500 in there, and of course then you can put in your if I find a DVD drive, let's go now. Yes, is that a good one? Yeah, it's a black one. Look, there you go. So let me turn off. Let's turn off the standard floppy disk. Right. So you can see I can put in here a standard 5¼ inch drive. You could put in it a 5¼ inch floppy disk drive, as long as it's a standard 5¼ bay type size. So you'll be able to fit that in there. That was one of those where I was nagged into doing it. And to be honest, yeah, it's not a bad idea actually. I had to change the power supply type, but that solved me a few problems as well, so I can go up to much higher now. This will take, you can get an SFX power supply 300 watt for about 30 quid, which I think is pretty damn good. If you want to go up to 450, 500, 600 watts, the price goes through the roof. So 450 is about £80. It's a lot more, but for an Amiga, who cares? I mean, we talk about Amigas here. 300 should be plenty. So you can get all your parts in here. You can see I've got drives under here. I've obviously got my drive mounting bay here. So that, anyway, that look, there's a 500. You can see it's the working. Now that board will we're going to be prototyping that soon, but that will be an option that you can add. There's going to be a lot of options on this because it's supporting so many platforms. There'll be a base kit, but like for example, the back plate will be specific to what you're going to put in it, and you screw it together with the back plate and put it all together. So that's how it's going to work. Okay, so that's the 500. Now let's move over to the 1200. Let me turn off the 500 specific parts. Okay, turn them off. So you can see all the backs have turned off. Let's get rid of this drive because it's in the way a bit. Okay. And go to the 1200. Now I'll turn on everything for now. Right, so you can see now what I've got now is I've got my, let's turn these fans off so because they're kind of in the way. Fans. Okay, so here's the back. Obviously you can see it's got the sockets for the 1200 now. You'll also notice now I'm going to turn off the expansion card because I want to explain that. Let me give it to that first of all. So to start with, you're going to be able to get your accelerator in there, and I'm going to turn off the power supply as well. I think that's quite important for the moment to explain this. Right, so at the moment the board we have here is the 1200 and accelerator card, and you notice there's a hole in the side of the chassis. Okay, if I turn that round, you can see there's a hole in the chassis. That's going to allow you to put the PCMCIA cards in. Okay, now I'm leaving as part of the 1200 these two slots at the back. Now the reason for that is this: initially, when I first shipped this, it will not have. Well, I can put an expansion board in it, but the problem is this: that getting hold of the sockets. Let me turn off the accelerator. Getting hold of the sockets is very difficult. So, you know, out of the box, it's going to be tricky to be able to do this. If this little socket on the end is in the wrong position actually, but which is the power supply connector, and we're going to have to think of another way of doing this, the power connection to the system. But my plan was to do this, but the sockets are quite tricky to get hold of. If I can get a supply of the sockets, we can make a board, we can power it, etc. And then this slot here is where you'd plug your accelerator to come back on itself, which to me seems like a much better idea. And you can have your cooler or put fans underneath the accelerators and that kind of thing. Now, another point is people have asked me for, oh, well, can you put a mediator in? Well, obviously you can't put a mediator in it because they'd have to redesign it. But anyone, it's depending on the success of this case. This is how it's going to be configured. So if someone wants to make a board that will plug into the socket, turn them around, and then allow you to have two cards plugged in this configuration, then yeah, that's fine. But of course, there's, you know, it's not an easy thing to do. So but just please be aware of that. I will say, as it turns out, I've done a poll on this. And out of about 150 people or 200 people who went for the poll, 4 people said that the slots are important. The rest said no. So the slots, yes, they are something we'd like to, but there's only so much we can do, and this would probably require bus arbitration. So that's where we'll talk to the community. But I do know for a fact that the 500, lots of people want the plug-in cards, and we can get the sockets. So I can make, there's standard items, I can get the sockets. So it's a bit more tricky with 1200, but you can put it in this case. So standard 1200 will fit. Get rid of, let me just get rid of that, put the accelerator on. Standard 1200 will fit with your accelerator card and all your drives and everything else. Tons of room in there for all the bits and pieces you like. We will sort something out about the power supply if we can't do a socket, because it's only a case, I mean, my idea was to run the onto the floppy disk port on here, but of course it's been pointed out to me that the motherboard needs minus 12 volts as well. So we're having another look at that, but there's going to be ways I can put 12, the voltage onto it. But it is tricky. I've got to be honest with you, it's tricky at the moment. So any advice, if you've got some advice, you know about the 1200s, then by all means do come back to me. So that's the 1200. Now I have replaced my 600, which I stupidly sold a couple of months ago to raise money to do this kind of work, and then I've decided to do this case, and then of course I've got rid of the 600. It is on the way, but basically it's the same ports at the back. There'll be a different back here again. You will not have any slots. I don't actually see any points of any slots because there's no way to connect them. So I haven't decided what to do about the slots yet. But there will be support for the 600, because I know a lot of people have got them with vampires, so that's kind of important because they need space and the power, etc. So that's that. Now I want to I'm going to pause just for a second. Okay, another point actually is quite interesting. I had confirmation from Trevor that the design follows the MiniITX format. So basically the Tabor 1222 will fit inside this case. Now it is a MiniITX format, so actually it will just use the standard MiniITX back panel. There is a blanking plate that goes over the ports that's coming with the board. And of course then you'll be able to plug in the GPU, etc. I think they have a single slot GPU, to be fair, but again you'll be able to plug that in there. Now also something that before I come onto the PC side, one of the reasons for this blanking plate is so you can mount an internal Raspberry Pi or something like that, so you can have two computers in one, which has been requested, and I actually quite like the idea of it myself anyway. So so that's gonna be there. So that's the Tabor. Looking forward to seeing that come on the market. I know they've got some drivers. They're still writing some drivers for it, but the hardware is pretty much there. But yeah, so that's good news. We can support that straight out the gate. Okay, so now we come to what I think actually is probably the most interesting as far as this project's concerned, is the plugging in of MiniITX and MicroATX motherboards. The reason I say it is because obviously I'm a big fan of AROS, so we can take existing x86 motherboards, plug them in, and use them. There's lots of drivers for lots of different boards, so it makes a really powerful Amiga-like operating system using the AROS. Again, the Tabor's are MiniITX, and there's a couple of other Amiga boards being made that have been done to the MiniITX format. But basically, this will take any MiniITX motherboard and MicroATX. However, with the MicroATX, you're only really going to use one slot. And the reason for this is you can probably see by this clue on the left. This is something that may not appear on the first batch, the window on the side, but I like the idea of having this window on the side because it's going to show off the GPU. In the PC market, they do love to see the GPU glowing behind there, and I'm a big virtual reality fan. And for those that don't know, the Amiga 3000 was the computer that powered Virtuality, which was the very first consumer level virtual reality system. So it's I think a great thing that you're going to have a, yes, it's not an Amiga 3000, I know that, but it's nice to see the Amiga 3000 look. Some of these will be powered by Amigas internally. Obviously for virtual reality this is just not possible yet, but so you'll be able to have that case with a virtual reality setup, which is one of the reasons why I put these ports on the front. So there's a couple of USBs and an HDMI port for this. Now again, that's an option, won't be standard, but it'll be an option to be able to do that. One thing I didn't mention, of course, on the earlier part of the video was the compact flash. You can see there's a compact flash socket there. So you'll for your 1200, 500, whatever. If you've got an expansion, say it's 1200 compact flash or 600 compact flash, you'll be able to run the cable to the front and then push in and remove the drives accordingly, which I think would be quite useful. But anyway, back onto the MiniITX. So yeah, in fact, I'm actually missing something in here. Let me just turn that on while I'm at it. Now, yes, I've got the lid here. It's got a nice hole. Now, as I said, again, it's important to understand the initial batch will probably not have the windows. When the window comes along, I'll make sure you can order them separately as an upgrade. But I'm not sure I can do the window straight out of the box. I will do the tray, have the slot ready so all the trays will be prepared. But it's the whole thing with the plastic glass, whatever it is on the front. I may not be able to do it in the first batch, so that's very important to understand that. And I think a Labor Day enough. But I want to show you what I'd like to do for the in the future. So let me take that lid off, and then you can have a look inside. Where's my lid window? Turn that off. Now you can see inside here the layout. Now, to be honest, most people are not going to put a floppy disk in the front. So in fact, actually what I'll do is I'll turn off that floppy drive. Turn it off. But a lot of PC people, I think, would be interested in having one of these little boxes you can get. You plug it in, it gives you all those different memory card slots. They're quite popular, so you'll be able to put that in there if you want to. Or if you don't want it, you just literally just put in the well, when I can find it, blank standard floppy, turn it off. Right, so you can just have it like that. All right, now it's the internals that's the important bit here. So let me go up here now. So what we can see is now the power supply. Now you do not want to be buying the cheap power, the £30 power supply for this system. You want to be buying yourself a proper Gold 80, a really good quality power supply, and you can get some good 450s, which is I think probably enough for about £90. But they go up to 600 watt in this. Believe it or not, it's 600 watt in these tiny little power supplies, which is amazing. But I would recommend 450 and then get yourself a suitable GPU. Don't go too mad with your GPU because you've got to get this heat out of the system, obviously. But I've put these three 50mm fans. It doesn't sound a lot, but I'm pretty confident that it's going to suck an awful lot out. And we're going to use these so-called silent fans, which are really quiet fans. Obviously, once the prototype's done, we'll get some testing going. This is not going to be an overclocker's case. I think this is going to be a case where you run them at stock value. I think most people are buying this for looks. If you want to be able to overclock insanely, this is probably not the case for you. But it will be able to cope with stock settings. And so, for example, if you put in here something like a GTX 1060, 1070, I mean, I'm going to put a 1080 in mine, but you know, it's all an AMD, equivalent AMD. Again, I'm allowing for the dual slot, so you've got the obviously the dual slot option here, and again there will be a cover here to cover that piece up. Anyone wants to know, see there's holes in the side there for screwing in, so you can get through and screw in. There's a fair bit of thought gone into this. Little things though that would, you know, compromise I've had to make. You'll see here there's a slot. Oh, let's turn that off. You see there's a little slot there, and if I turn this, it's kind of tricky doing this so you can see it all, but let me just zoom into here. I may have to, yeah, you can see it goes behind the fans. Let me turn the fans off. This is not complete, it's not far off of finished actually, to be fair. They've got to move over a little bit. But you can see here there's a little indent that comes through, it makes a slot, and I'm only supporting the top, not the bottom. Purely because I haven't got any meat underneath it, so there's a number of compromises because purely the size of the thinness of this case. We have to make some compromises, but that'll hold it nice and securely. It'll be quite safe in there. So and there'll be, I haven't put the support in as yet for the board. This board here, there's got to be some support body put in there because obviously it's taking away the case the GPU as well. So there'll be some support in there for that. But you can see there's a MiniITX motherboard sits in there quite nicely. There's loads of room, funny enough, underneath this power supply, but for lots of reasons I've had to keep it in this format. And of course you'll plug your port cover inside there. That's why there's a big hole. But obviously with the real thing, you won't have a hole. You won't have a hole there. On again over here where the Raspberry Pi is, the Raspberry Pi, there'll be some kind of adapter. I mean, I'm not saying it has to sit there. You know, it can move along a bit. You can put it wherever you like and make your plate. But you've got it's a 75mm across by 20 down. So it's a fair big gap. So if you want to make a 3D print a part that holds different ports for whatever you're using this case for, or you can put Raspberry Pi in it. But there's quite a bit of space all around this system for external parts. I may actually put another one of those underneath here. I haven't decided yet, but it would only be useful for the PC version because the Amiga motherboard's set over here. But yeah, so I think for MiniITX now, MiniITX is probably the preferable one. I've got a MiniITX PCI riser, which I'll be as an option to which you'll plug it in. You can also use the floating cable ones, as long as you get shielded one, which will work quite nicely, so give you a bit of room to maneuver, especially if you want to put a micro ATX motherboard in there, and that first slot may not actually be the GPU slot, the 16 line PCI slot for the GPU, and then you can put a cable in there to come across. But ideally, you just put a MiniITX one in there. But they are a little bit more expensive, to be fair. So you know, if you've got micro ATX, we'll work around. But we've kind of thought about that as well. So, and you can see there's a gap here down the side. It's fairly tight, the gap. But and I've also thought about the power leads here. So you've got room there for the power leads to come out and then loop back in again. So when you put your lid back on it, this all should come out in the wash, because I'm going to test this when I built the prototype. Let me put the lid back on again. Keyboard lid window. I actually really like this window. So you'll be able to see that glowing nicely, which I think would be really cool. So there you go. There's quite a bit of thought gone into this. And hopefully it's you're still interested. There's so far is about 80 people down on the list. The Kickstarter, once I prototype this, the Kickstarter will start in January sometime, but it will end in February, give people a chance to get paid, because I know after Christmas everyone spends their money. But yeah, so it'll be in the new year. But it's going to be, I'm going to need 200 to make this actually work. It's going to need to get to a number of 200 sales. That will then pay for the all important, really expensive part. 200, maybe 250, but hopefully 200. But that'll pay for the molds, which is the most expensive part and the most important to me, I think, because to get that nice look at the front. But there you go. Hopefully you like it. Oh, one thing I didn't show you actually. Let me come back actually and show you this, because I think it's kind of neat. Let me turn off the drive tray, and if you look down here, you can see this bit sticking out. There's not initially, but there will be the option of a sliding filter. I put that in there to take a sliding filter, which I'm not sure, you know, it's probably going to quite be an expensive thing to make. It might have to roll in later on, but the idea is to just have a filter, plastic filter with the filter shield in it. It just literally slides down into there and filters the air coming through the front, because obviously all the air is coming through the front here. The CPU and the GPU, well, the GPU is okay because the GPU is going to blast out the back here, but the CPU is going to, you know, you're going to have a fairly lowish height cooler, but it's going to blow the heat up to the top, and then these extractor fans will suck it straight out. And the fan on the power supply will do the thing. So there's an awful lot of air going to be vented out of this system. So I don't think it's going to be a big problem. As long as if you overclock, I personally don't think overclocking this is going to be a good idea. If you want to overclock, go and buy a different case. But if you're happy with stock speeds, which I don't overclock mine, so I'm happy with stock speeds, and my VR system works beautifully, so shouldn't be a major problem. Okay, so there you go. Again, hopefully hopefully that you're still interested in all this work, and I will speak to you soon.